Hey, this is Chris. Wanted to jump in here right at the beginning to give you an update. My wife and I moved in April 2024. Around the same time, my brother Jerome was constructing a new studio in his home. And so that's done. The move is done. We're finally getting back on track, trying to get these recordings edited. We have 3 in the can that should be coming out relatively soon. So thank you for your patience and buckle up. This is going to be a short one, but it was very fun. You are listening to the Silver Screen Happy Hour. I'm Chris Wiegand, along with my brother Jerome.
Present and accounted for.
He started drinking like 10 minutes ago because we had some technical difficulties, and this is going to be a shorter episode because of it. So let's just jump in. I'm fighting a cold. You probably hear a wheeze in my voice every time I laugh.
So this is the first episode we've ever done where you're actually not drinking anything.
Yeah, I gotta. As soon as I jump off, or I'm getting in a car with my son and driving him to the airport, he's going down to Savannah. He's flying to Savannah, I should say, to see his girlfriend. So
it's responsible that you're not drinking.
Yeah, it's just
me, on the other hand, am irresponsible as usual. All right, so what are today's movies?
We are continuing our Oscar series, so we're going to be doing The Holdovers and
Killers
of the Flower Moon, right?
Now, have we decided this is our last of our Oscar season?
Well, I mean, we didn't do all the Oscar-nominated Best Pictures.
Fucking 10 of them, man.
I know. How about only if there's a, overwhelming demand from the fan base that we do, I don't know,
Poor Things versus American Fiction would be the last 2 that we would consider doing.
I haven't seen either of them yet. I actually wanted...
you saw American Fiction.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. American Fiction. I was thinking of Maestro, because we talked about that one too. And so, anyways, I saw American Fiction. I could do that one, but, so we'll figure it out. I want to jump into this one since it's going to be a shorter episode. Let's just jump into it.
Okay, so which one do you want to start with? Killers of the Flower Moon?
If we can do that one in 20 minutes, 3.5 hour movie.
All right, so Killers of the Flower Moon. Let me give you the specs real quick. So, of course, 2023, same as all these other ones, directed by Martin Scorsese. Screenplay was Eric Roth and Martin Scorsese, based on the novel Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann. It is a running time of 3 hours, 26 minutes, had a budget of $200 million. Wow. It was released on October 20th, 2023, and it made $157 million worldwide, which is good for 37th place on the worldwide list.
It's crazy because it cost them as much as it cost to make Barbie and Oppenheimer to make that film.
Absolutely.
What the hell?
But it will likely end up making all of its money back. It's at 157 right now, and with some Oscar the fact that it was nominated for 10 Academy Awards.
Will it though? Because isn't it on Netflix?
Yeah, well, no. Was it on Netflix? I know I streamed it, but I can't remember. Oh, no, Apple Plus. I streamed it on Apple Plus.
Really?
But people are going to start buying it on DVD and Blu-ray.
You're right. Yep.
So it's eventually, it'll probably, even though it walked away empty-handed at the Oscars, it had 10 nominations. There a lot of buzz went around it. It likely will eventually make its money back. This got Martin Scorsese to 16 total Academy Award nominations in his career, including his 10th nomination for Best Director, which is one more than Spielberg and currently 2 shy of William Wyler's 12, which is the lead. He only has 1 Oscar, unfortunately, for 2006's The Departed. He should have more, but he only has 1. All right, it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Ernest Burkhart, Lily Gladstone as Molly Burkhart, and Robert De Niro as William Hale, as well as Jesse Plemons as Tom White. What is your relationship to the movie?
Well, I must have seen it on Apple Plus. I remember watching it at home. Yeah, well, do you want me to read the log line?
Log me.
Okay. When oil is discovered in 1920s Oklahoma under Osage Nation land, the Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery.
Yes.
So it's a dark movie. My relationship to it, I understood the Oscar hype. I thought it was a great film. I mean, the actors, I don't know. I thought it was a good film, but it wasn't my favorite movie of the year, by several.
And I love Scorsese, but I agree with you.
Yeah. It left you sick at the end, like a lot of his movies do.
Yeah. So, all right, we have the beats. Opening image, the Osage tribe, Fairfax, Oklahoma, a tribe who is in complete understanding that the white man is coming. The oil comes out of the ground, and the setup is laid out that the Osage Nation have become rich, like the richest of the Native Americans in the land. Theme stated, Ernest Burkhart steps off the train. This is when we first meet Leonardo DiCaprio. He's met by a solicitor, a little person, who at the 5-minute mark is handing out pamphlets and says to Ernest, make it rich. You can make it rich here. Make it rich. You can make it rich here. This will be Ernest's theme throughout the film, as he clearly states later how much he loves money and how far he will go and what will drive him through his emotional shifts of either do the wrong thing but get rich or the right thing and get nothing. That'll be his back and forth emotional tug of war throughout the film. Inciting incident, 13 minutes in, not only do we meet William King Hale, he likes to be called King, but also, this is the character played by Robert De Niro, but also Hale's discussions about how the Osage are rich but also sickly. He says, quote, not one of them live over the age of 50. Now, most of the premise is laid out here, too, about how there's like white guardians that are entrusted with the Osage wealth, and the idea is to marry them and gain the head rights. Then in the event of their death, you then take their oil money. It's only hinted at in this part. It gets I think if there was one flaw in this, they didn't explain that well enough.
Yeah.
So what it was, they gloss over it a couple times with dialogue, but here's how it works. So back then, the Osage people didn't have the right to their own money, even though they had the land. They had to have a financier be in charge of the money, usually a white banker. So if they ever needed money, they'd say, okay, I want to take a loan out, or I need $1,000 or whatever. Those bankers would then siphon off money for themselves. Wow. So they knew that it was bullshit. So what they did is they married white people and thought, well, if it's my husband, then he can get the money for me and I don't have to worry about him stealing it behind my back. Little did they know there was worse going at it than that. But anyway, all right, B story. At 18 minutes, which is very early for a traditional B story, especially for a film that's well over 3 hours long. But Molly is introduced, enters the picture, and meets Ernest, and it is clear there's immediate attraction between them. She serves at the B story because she will drive Ernest to his spiritual goal. All right, side note. Why is this Ernest's story and not Molly's? Well, I'll tell you why. Story structure-wise, the book, by the way, was about the birth of the FBI. It was mostly about the investigation. Mm-hmm. In this movie, the investigation's kind of a second half movie kind of thing. And Molly largely disappears in the second half when she's bedridden. Mm-hmm. So this is Ernest's story. This is how he has to do his growth and development and find out, do I love my wife or do I want the money and the land?
Well, and the character that Leo plays is, how can I put this kindly? I mean, doesn't seem to have a very high IQ. And
no, he's dim-witted.
His tug of war doesn't seem very dramatic. I mean, I don't know. Well,
because he wants to be impressive to his uncle, and his uncle is promising him riches. So, of course, he's going to work for him and do whatever he needs to do. Yeah. Then he falls in love with Molly, and now he's got this push and pull of, of what he's going through. Largely, like I said, Molly's going to largely disappear in the second half. The character arc is all Ernest. How Molly or any of the sisters, you would think, and this is the part where I mean they should have explained this a little bit better, but how Molly or any of the sisters would want to get involved with any of these white guys, considering that there's people dying left and right, is beyond me. But like I said, it's how they felt they could get better hands on their money. They even joke about it at one point about, oh, he just wants your money. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, they say it almost as a joke, but they're like, this is their best option. Right. Marry one of these white guys, and we have better access to our money. Okay, catalyst. Molly invites Ernest over for dinner. This is a pretty big turning point because this is where he meets the mother, Lizzie, who clearly doesn't like him. But it's clear after dinner, or during dinner, that there is an obvious attraction between the two. This isn't like today, man. Back then, you invited somebody over for dinner to meet mom, you're getting married. Like that's kind of a big deal. And Lizzie, the mother, it's interesting. She can't stand him. She even says later to one of her daughters, Anna, you're my favorite because you won't marry one of those white people. Even though Anna was fucking Byron, which is Ernest's brother, it didn't matter. She didn't marry him. Mm-hmm. And all the other sisters were marrying white people. And she didn't like that. The mother didn't like that because she knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Debate begins. The debate is whether or not to enter into this. Sisters are gossiping later at an outdoor event, talking about how Ernest is a coyote, where they acknowledge, that he's after the money. But she likes him, so she'll marry him. Again, it seemed weird at the beginning. When you knew before you knew all the laws and stuff, you watched this, and I was watching it going, how do they not see this? Why would they marry any of these dudes? And then, as the movie goes on, you kind of realize, like, oh, this is their only shot to get their money.
Because they show him going into the bank trying to get the money, and the banker's just giving him a hard time.
That actually happens way later, which I thought they should have thrown a scene like that.
Yeah, put that right up front, right?
In the beginning where, Molly goes to ask for money, and the guy's like, I don't think you should have this money.
Right.
It's like, it's fucking my money, dude. What are you talking about? So, all right, break into 2. Ernest and Molly get married. This is our jump into Act 2 because now it's a strange new world, upside down version of Act 1 for both Ernest and Molly. Fun and games. Act 2 opens with some trailer images as we deliver on the premise. Molly's sister Millie dies. Another instance where the Osage dies young to a mysterious illness. And the headlights go to her husband, her white husband, Bill Smith, who definitely wins the douche of the movie award. As much as this movie is filled with douches, Bill Smith seems to be the biggest douche.
Right.
And then after the death of his wife, Millie, he immediately starts dating Rita, another sister, for obvious reasons. Ernest and Molly waste no time having kids. At one point, there's 2 old white people looking at the kids, saying they're commenting on how one looks darker than the other.
Right.
They're like, that one definitely looks white. The other one looks savage.
Oh, God.
Savage is the word she uses. More fun. By the way, V and I watched this movie together. We were both laughing at that part because our kids also are mixed. And Vivi looks darker like my wife, and Val looks a lot like me. She's the white of the 2. So we were laughing because we were like, I wonder if people think about that about us when we walk by. That one there looks savage.
Oh, God. I mean, it's good you could joke about it, but that's for real how people talked.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. She jokes about how when she takes the kids to the shopping market, she thinks other people think she kidnapped Val.
Oh, my God.
All right, more fun and games as now Lizzie becomes ill. Outspoken Anna has a big blow-up with Ernest's brother Byron. This leads to her gruesome death. The tribe has a meeting. They're flat out saying in this meeting among all of them that the white men are killing their people for the oil money, and white William Hale is sitting right there.
Yep.
And he's all, yes, let's find these killers. Motherfucker, it's you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It was like, it gave you kind of a chill,
Yeah, but the tribe people don't seem to notice. They're just like, yes, William Hale's on our side.
Well, he did a really good job,
Yeah, he spoke their language and everything. He learned their ways.
Right.
He took care of them as best he could on the surface so that when this shit happened, nobody would suspect him.
Right.
We are introduced to the Shawn brothers, the Fairfax doctors that Molly plain doesn't trust, and for obvious reason. We later find out that these are the ones that are keeping these people sick. There's a reason why these are a sickly people that don't live past 50. These fuckers are poisoning them, and they're doing it on Hale's direction. And because it takes years to die from this, the assumption that the Osage bloodlines never live long, it's never mysterious, and almost never has an investigation.
Right.
And they're on the payroll of Hale. When Molly finds out that she has diabetes, she doesn't want to go to these doctors for insulin. She wants Ernest to give her the injections. Okay, downfall of Henry Roan becomes apparent. He gets drunk a lot. He's suicidal. He was Molly's first husband. And Hale puts a seed in Ernest's head that Henry might have Molly's head rights because she was married to him first. Now, he doesn't, but this is Hale's way of manipulating Leo, right? Ernest, into doing whatever he needs him to do. Mother Lizzie dies, and this is getting to be enough for Molly. Now she wants an investigation. She hires a private detective. Ernest is hell-bent on getting rid of Henry Roan and gets John Ramsey in on it to do the job. Midpoint scene, 1 hour and 39 minutes into a 3 hour and 26-minute film, Ernest hits his false victory when Ramsey kills Henry Roan. This serves as an obvious midpoint for several reasons. The story is now going to take a turn because up until now, almost every murder seemed either natural, had some explanation, albeit weak, or had little investigation, or little or no investigation at all. This time, They were supposed to stage a suicide for a guy who's clearly suicidal, but dumbass John Ramsey shoots him in the back of the head and doesn't even leave the gun. He takes the gun with him. So, not a suicide anymore, dumb fucks. But anyway, so, I mean, anyone watching that scene was probably, like, doing what I did. I was, like I said, V and I were watching this, and I was literally like, he shot him in the back of the... And now he's leaving with the gun!
Right.
I'm literally yelling at the TV, you gotta leave the gun, asshole! Not that it matters, you shot him in the back of the head. Yeah. All right, so this is Ernest's tangible goal of securing Molly's head rights. To him, this is his false victory, right? I got Henry Roan out of the way, now I got Molly's head rights, and this guy was a problem, and now he's gone. Everything seems great, right? Bad guys closing in. Almost immediately, things start to turn sideways. Ramsey goes and arrives at Ernest where he's shooting pool and hands him the gun that he just used to kill Henry Roan. Ernest tells Molly she wants answers. He tells the very next scene, De Niro's character, Hale, is pissed. He's screaming the same things I was screaming. It was supposed to look like an suicide, you dumbbell. Calls him a dumbbell. So great. They try to pin it, and then Hale immediately goes into, this is William Hale's best attribute. He immediately goes into damage control. Okay, let's go. Get in the car. Where are we going? Well, we're going to go pin this on Roy Bunch. So he goes to Roy Bunch, and he's like, you better leave town. Everyone knows it was you. And Roy Bunch is like, I didn't do shit. What are you talking about? Yeah. Because he didn't do anything. So he ain't budging. Hale tries to intimidate or downright eliminate any known attached strings. Bill Smith's dog is killed and left it for him at the front of his house. Hale directs Ernest to hire A.C. Kirby to take out Bill Smith so that he can get his hands on the head rights left behind by both Millie and Rita in the event of their deaths. Smith's house blows up, killing Bill Smith and Molly's sister Rita and their nanny Nettie. That was a tongue twister. Rita and their nanny Nettie. This forces Molly to want to go to Washington, D.C. to seek help in solving the murders. This is the part that we talked about where she goes to the bank to get money for this travel, and they won't give it to her. At this point, the doctors and Hale give Ernest the poison to give to Molly. They don't trust her, and they want to keep her quiet. They tell Ernest, oh, this is just to calm her down. It's fucking poison. It's going to kill her. All right, after getting the injections and becoming ill from the poison, Molly starts to have visions. She sees the owl, right? The mother makes a significance in the earlier when she's dying that you see an owl when you're about to die. So when we see Molly see the owl, we're like, oh, fuck. She's on her way out. She also says that she has a vision of her mother, Lizzie, telling her to speak to the man in the hat, which at that moment doesn't seem to make sense. However, the very next scene, at the 2-hour, 4-minute mark, there's a knock on the door. And who is it? It's the man in the hat. It's Tom White, played by Jesse Plemons, who's from the Bureau of Investigations, the newly formed Bureau of Investigations.
Or otherwise known as Dead-Eyed Todd from Breaking Bad.
Todd from Breaking Bad. And the funny thing is, he's played nothing but great characters since then, but I still can't get past his character in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, every time we see him in anything, Jesse's like, it's Dead-Eye Todd.
Yeah, it's fuck. I don't even say Dead-Eye. I'm just like, it's Todd. But in like every movie since then, he's been like a good guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he shows up. He's the man in the hat. He wants to talk to Molly, but Ernest won't let him. At this point, a bunch of other Bureau agents. This was the beauty of the birth of the FBI. Because it's before DNA and they didn't have a lot of scientific labs or anything, they did shit a wholly different way, which was cool. The Bureau then goes undercover to infiltrate Fairfax. So one dude who looks Native American, his name's John Wren, he goes there and says, oh, I'm Osage, I'm looking for family. So of course they welcome him in, and they start telling him all the secrets of the town, right? Another guy goes undercover as the insurance guy. I don't know if you noticed, when De Niro goes to get what he thought was going to be Henry Roan's insurance money, because Henry Roan's now dead and the guy won't give it to him, that's an undercover investigations agent. So they infiltrated the entire town, both on the nose, which Tom White wasn't hiding anything. I'm here to investigate. But then they implanted a bunch of other seeds that were undercover to get info.
Yep.
Okay, so Hale continues to cut ties. He sets up Blackie, tells him to rob a bank in Drumright, then informs the cops so that when they come out of the bank holding all the money, the cops are there to kill everybody. Yeah. However, the big problem with that is at the bank at Drumright, Blackie doesn't get shot. He gets arrested.
Yeah.
So he's still alive to talk. He does set up AC and Grammer. Finally, he wants Ernest to sign over the head rights to him in the event something happens to him and Molly. This culminates in the all is lost.
Which, wouldn't that make you nervous after you've been through everything you've been through?
So far in this movie, whenever somebody has said in the event something happens to them, they fucking die.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to kill me now?
But dumbass Leo, as much as the entire scene, you can tell he doesn't want to do it, he ends up signing at the end.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't fucking get it. That culminates in the all is lost at the 2-minute 20 mark, the 2-hour 20 mark. Old man Elvin Reynolds spills everything he knows, which is a lot because all he does is sit on his porch and watch everything that happens in that town. He tells everything to the bureau guys, including about Kelsey, which, God, I was wrong about Bill Hale. Kelsey wins the douchebag of the movie award. This guy implicates himself by going and he's asking the guy, he's like, so my ex-wife, if I adopt her kids and then they die, I get their insurance money and head rights, right? And the guy's like, okay, so you're basically telling me you're going to kill your kids once you adopt them?
Right,
and he's like, well, if collecting the money isn't illegal, like he's
right. No, he said something like, as long as it's not illegal. He basically,
as long as it's not illegal, so obviously leaving that office, he's apprehended immediately, and thank God, because this guy's a fucking menace. And the Bureau acknowledges that this is a trend, right? That every time somebody tries to take out insurance on somebody, and nowadays in your and I world, it's so, you can't do this. Like, it's so, first of all, it's a red flag if you take insurance out on somebody and then they die.
Yeah.
But then, like, usually there's a certain amount of time that has to go by anyway. Like, if I take insurance out on you, like, you can't die for, like, at least a year or whatever. Apparently back in 1920s Fairfax, Oklahoma, this shit was like, I'm going to take insurance out on my car. And then the next day the car explodes and they're like, all right, pay up. Like, it was just how they did shit. That's how they did everything, apparently. And the Bureau gets wind of this. And it culminates when they're all outside talking about their plan, all these FBI, all these Bureau agents, and they notice that William Hale's farm is on fire. And one of the Bureau guys says to the other one, he just took an insurance policy out on that farm with me like yesterday. Now it's on fire.
Yeah.
And the other guy says, well, I guess you'll be busy tomorrow morning. It was so fucking blatantly obvious how these criminals were doing all this shit. Dark night of the soul, Ernest gives himself the poison in addition to lacing Molly's injections. He's obviously depressed and drunk at this point. He is at his lowest point, and he is arrested in the next scene. Break into 3. We're now full on in Act 3 now, since the proverbial shit has certainly hit the metaphorical fan. Everybody's going down now, including Hale, who even gives himself up for arrest because he thinks, I got all the best lawyers, I got all the money, I'm going to get off, so it doesn't matter. I'll do the nice gesture of surrendering, right? 5-point finale, here we go. Gathering the team. It's more like disassembling of the team as Blackie rolls on Ernest, Ernest rolls on Ramsey, Ramsey rolls on Ernest and Hale, and then Blackie rolls on Hale.
Yeah.
They're all turning on each other. Thankfully, the officials find and save Molly and get her out of that goddamn house so they can get her some real medicine and into a real hospital. Execution of the plan. Bureau's plan is to get Ernest in court to admit to everything so he can take down Hale. But when he gets in there, he stonewalls them and sides with Hale. Chaos ensues. Ernest does get to meet with Molly, who's pretty much healed up now, but she doesn't know that she can trust him. There's a family meeting where all the white people in power are putting pressure on Ernest to stay and side with them. Kelsey, now with nothing to hide, since his dumbass already pretty much said everything he needed to say, is now on the stand, and he buries Hale and Ernest with the story, and they show it, how he killed Anna. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the movie, which, by the way, a little side note so we don't get confused by the Annas. The sister was Anna who got killed. Leo's latest kid in the movie, the baby's name, they named Anna after the sister.
Right.
That will be important because of right now.
Yeah.
Hightower surprise. Ernest is told his youngest daughter, Anna, died from whooping cough. And although there's no direct suggestion she was murdered, it seemed pretty clear it was whooping cough. It's hard to ignore that these doctors may have been in on that. Especially since, well, we'll get to it. Oh, it's the next thing. It's the next thing. Okay. Since the doctors were in charge and they have everything to lose if Hale goes under. Dig down deep. Fed up with all the lies, Ernest tells Hale he's going to roll on him, right? He's going to tell him everything. He obviously doesn't like this, and he suggests, and here's the part where you wonder if Anna's death to whooping cough that the doctors were in on it, because De Niro tells Leo, you have other kids. Like, that's kind of like he just slides that in there.
Right.
But it's almost like a threat.
Oh, yeah,
right?
it's 100% a threat. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do this, right? So it's very telling that he had something to do with baby Anna's death. Execution of the new plan. Ernest is in court, and he rolls on everyone. The truth finally comes out. Except when he's face-to-face with Molly, she flat out asks him if he poisoned her. He says, nope. Lies through his fucking teeth.
Yeah.
But he is honest about everything else. He does take everything else down. So despite not having the guts to come clean to the mother of his kids, Ernest does in fact earn his spiritual goal, a goal he didn't know he needed, which was to burn down William Hale's entire operation. Again, if you had told him at the beginning that that was his spiritual goal, he would have said no way, right? He was there to work for his uncle. He loved his uncle. He wanted the money. His spiritual goal, which we always say, what you did not know you need, was to take down the whole operation. Yeah. Burn it all down.
Yep.
Climax. Performance show recaps the consequences like a newswire. I thought this was an interesting touch at the end. Instead of showing like printed words on the screen about what happened, 10 years later, this, or to take any more time showing it. They do like this weird newsreel thing where they're performing, right? Actors are performing. This is the scene that Jack White is in.
Yeah.
Where he's the radio host announcer. Right? And they're announcing kind of what happens to each person.
Yeah.
Right? Scorsese himself makes an appearance at the end to speak on Molly's obituary. Scorsese said later in a quote when being interviewed why he chose himself to read it. Mm-hmm. He said it was his only way to feel, to rest, of course, his own Catholic guilt, right?
Yeah, right.
He felt he had to read the obituary to Molly because of just the fact that everything had been... This story's been hidden.
I remember you telling me, what movie were we doing where you said every one of his movies is about Catholic guilt. It has something, or like his Catholic guilt shows through.
Yeah, well, we were talking about theme.
Yeah.
And I was saying not to confuse this with themes, like filmmakers' themes, and then I used that as an example. For instance, every Scorsese movie is about Catholic guilt. Right?
There it is.
So, yeah, there it is. Closing image, Native American tribe, legacies of Osage, present day, representing those that have survived the coming of the white man. All right, so real quick again, notes on the arc. Ernest's tangible goal was to get rich by securing the head rights to Molly's oil money. And he basically achieves that at the midpoint scene. His spiritual goal, which he did not know he needed, was to burn the whole operation down. Trivia. Investigation of the Osage murders was the first investigation ever handled by the newly formed Bureau of Investigations created by J. Edgar Hoover, which would later be called the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations. However, interestingly enough, in the 2011 Clint Eastwood movie named J. Edgar, in which Leonardo DiCaprio plays J. Edgar, there, to my recollection, because I saw the movie, there's no mention of the Osage murders.
Interesting.
In that film, even though it was their first investigation.
Yeah, you think they spent,
Yeah, they spent a lot of time on the Charles Lindbergh kidnapping, and of course they spent a lot of time on J. Edgar's sexual history and his relationship with his confidant Clyde Tolson. No mention of the Osage murders.
Right.
The budget for Killers of the Flower Moon was an aforementioned $200 million. $40 million of that was Leo's salary.
Wow.
Most he's ever made on a movie.
That's a pretty good payday.
This is funny, too. Seventh collaboration between Scorsese and DiCaprio. The 11th between Scorsese and De Niro. The 4th between De Niro and DiCaprio. But despite all that, it's the first time all three have worked together.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. All right, thoughts. Closing up thoughts on Killers of the Flower Moon.
Well, I'll just say it's worth seeing for the performances. I mean, it's a commitment, I know, but I'm not mad that I saw it. You know what I mean? It was definitely worth seeing.
Yeah.
Didn't win Best Picture, but I understand why. There were I don't know. Maybe it's just I don't know. I can't put my finger on why my heart didn't go for that for Best Picture, because it was a good movie. you know?
It was. I think the biggest criticism is that it struggles to find which story it wants to tell.
Yeah, and like you said, if they would have set it up, and they didn't tell it clearly in the beginning, like you said, and that led a lot of confusion for people.
Right. So are we telling Molly's story? Are we telling the Osage women's story? Are we telling Ernest's story? Or are we telling the FBI story? Which story are we telling?
Right,
you know?
right.
So Scorsese obviously wanted to tell all of those stories, and that's how you get a 3-hour, 26-minute film. All right.
Well, can we get the Holdovers in 19 minutes?
I think we can.
I gotta get a kid in the car to the airport.
It's going to be our record episode. Well, tell him to start loading the car up right now so he's ready to go. All right, The Holdovers. I'll give you some quick specs here. This one will be quicker because it was a much shorter film. 2023, directed by Alexander Payne, written by David Hemmingson, who also served as producer. Oddly enough, despite a lot of other work, this is Hemmingson's first feature film screenplay. Starring Paul Giamatti as Paul Hunnam, Divine Joy Randolph as Mary Lamb, and Dominic Sessa as Angus Tully. Running time, 2 hours, 13 minutes, with a budget of $13 million. What a contrast from the other one.
Really.
It was released on November 10th, 2023, and made $43 million worldwide at the box office, which obviously more than doubles its budget. Half of that was domestic, so it made the same amount overseas as it made here in the U.S., good for 80th place on the worldwide list, beating out films like The Iron Claw, Ferrari, 80 for Brady, and 2 previous episode films, Past Lives and Anatomy of a Fall. It beat all of those. All right, what's your connection to this film?
It was my favorite one of the year. We streamed it. What was it on? I forgot what platform it was streaming on, but we might have rented it. I can't remember.
I actually bought it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I wish I would have bought it because it was my favorite of the year. I was disappointed in the Academy Award take.
Except for one.
Except for one, yeah. So you want me to read the log line?
Log me.
Okay. A cranky history teacher at a prep school is forced to remain on campus over the holiday with a grieving cook and a troubled student who has no place to go.
All right.
Another thing about my relationship to this film, we watched this, Jesse and I watched this, and Jonah, I think we called him in the room, and I don't remember if he watched the whole thing or not. I told him he's got to watch this movie because our son Jonah, he has a degree in history from Michigan State University, and he wants to go on to teach. He wants to, we're not sure if he's going to be a professor, but it was so funny because some of the things Paul Giamatti were saying to the students, we could totally see our son Jonah saying to these kids. I'm like, oh my God, this is the ghost of Christmas future, Jonah. You better watch it.
He doesn't have a lazy eye, though. You got to give him a lazy eye.
And he doesn't smell like fish.
All right. Opening image. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the beats. Opening image. Choir practice. A teacher instructing students. 1970. Christmas prep school in what appears to be a New England area of the country at a fictitious Barton school. Setup. Intro to Paul Hunnam as he grades papers. Intro to students, specifically Angus Tully. And then intro to Mary Lamb, the cook. It's interesting. All these 3 introductions happen one after another, and that'll be important later. Inciting incident. 9 minutes in, Paul gets his assignment from the headmaster Woodrow that he has to stay over the holiday and be the caretaker of the boys that can't go home for the holidays. Theme stated at the 12-minute mark, Woodrow is telling Paul about being less cantankerous with the boys over the holiday because, after all, it is Christmas. He tells him, quote, at least pretend to be a human being. This will be Paul's running theme, where he has this emotional shift throughout the film of trying to be more laid back, and then sometimes he reverts back to his very stern and angry ways. This will happen throughout the film. It will go back and forth until he reaches his spiritual goal. Now, very interesting technique here. Could be that it was because it's a first-time feature-length film writer, but I think it works very well. The B story, the catalyst, and the break into 2 all happen at once. Mm-hmm. This is a unique technique. Hemmingson combines the 3 beats into one, presumably to save time, but they all serve the story. 20 minutes in, Tully gets the news that he, in fact, will not be joining his folks in St. Kitts, and he'll be stuck with the other holdovers. That's the catalyst. This is revealed as Paul is laying out the plan and the rules of the procedures to the other boys as Tully comes in to break the news. This is the beginning of the holiday break, and this is clearly our jump into the new world, the upside-down version of Act 1. Everyone else is gone, and these boys have begun Christmas break with their cranky history teacher. This also, I believe, serves as the B story, because even though Tully has already been introduced, he wasn't serving this purpose then, but he is now, and it's going to be Tully that helps drive Paul to his spiritual goal. Most people would look at this and say that Divine Joy Randolph's character, Mary Lamb, is the B story. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. She also disappears near the end of the second act, where we need Paul to get to his spiritual goal. It's Tully that drives him there, Angus Tully, not the cook. She's got her own story going on. You know what I mean? She's not there to serve his story. Fun and games. We deliver on the premise of the first half of Act 2, while the development of Mary's presence would strongly suggest that she's the B story, knowing that she disappears at the film's climax doesn't drive Paul to a spiritual goal, as I said. In this segment, we see the boys, most of whom are strangers, right? Only a few of them know each other, interacting outside by a truck and sharing a smoke. This scene is clever because it is needed to explain who everybody is and why they're stuck at the school. But to keep it from sounding too much like boring exposition, they spend the scene slinging insults at each other. And I thought that was another clever way to keep it kind of fresh and entertaining. We always talk about the death kill of exposition, where you have to explain things to the audience. In this scene, they use that opportunity to insult each other, but by doing so, they're telling the audience where each of them are from and why they're there. Right.
Yeah, it was clever. Worked.
Yeah. Paul hangs out with Mary on the very first night. We get a little bit of backstory about her son, Curtis, who was lost in Vietnam. We also get a Save the Cat vibe from Tully. Now, we always talk about the Blake Snyder books, where we get all these terms from. Again, this is Blake Snyder's beat sheets specifically that we use for these movies. One element he called Save the Cat was something you throw in there to let the audience root for somebody who seems like a dipshit, but if you give them something nice to do, then the audience will follow them, right?
Yeah.
Tully is woken up in the middle of the night by the little kid, the Korean kid, I think his last name was Park. He had a nightmare, and he peed himself. But Tully is there as, like, instead of making fun of him, he tells him, like, look, just roll over to the dry side and try to get back to sleep. In the morning, I'll help you. If anybody else finds out, they'll bury you for it. I'll help you. We'll clean the sheets and do all that stuff. So he's lending a helpful hand to a kid he doesn't even really know.
Right.
So that's his Save the Cat moment. One of the other boys' rich dad's helicopter shows up and takes all the boys skiing. All the parents are contacted and gave their okay except one.
Yeah.
Tully, of course. So now it's a 3-person story now. Now we have Paul and Mary and Tully. A little bit more backstory on Paul, as the 3 of them now are forced to spend the next evening together. Paul tells how he almost married once. Seeing the absolute dismay of Tully being alone, no family or friends, this forces Paul to attempt to, as the headmaster said, act like a human being. He actually tries to be a little bit more laid back at times. There's a scene where he actually offers him the cookies that he got from Lydia earlier in the movie. And when Tully storms off that he doesn't want the cookies, he actually looks at Mary. Paul looks at Mary and says, well, I'm trying. To which she just starts laughing. So he's acknowledging that he's trying to be a little bit more normal, right? A little bit more of a human. Yeah. Tully, in an act of defiance in the very next shot, ignores demands by Paul to avoid the gym. He said decides to run and jump on the equipment, and he dislocates his shoulder. This is the first real bonding between the two, as Paul has to take him to the hospital, and Tully lies about the relationship in order to prevent his teacher from getting in trouble. Midpoint scene. After bumping into Lydia, who's the one who gave Paul the cookies, she reveals... Oh, and by the way, it's presented that she's sort of like a love interest, right?
Right.
There's a little bit of flirting earlier in the movie when she gives him the cookies. There's definitely flirting here when she sees him at the restaurant. And she invites him to the Christmas party.
Right.
Paul's tangible goal of trying to, quote-unquote, act like a human or be a little bit more laid back, it's achieved when he decides, okay, I'll go. Because he wasn't going to at first. He was being his cantankerous self. I'm not going to the Christmas Eve party. And Mary's like, you got to go. You got to take the kid. He wants to go. All right, fine, I'll go. So he's achieving his tangible goal. At 1 hour and 6-minute mark, he takes Mary and Tully, who meets a girl there, by the way, that he actually likes. This is a false victory for Paul and others, as things are about to go sideways quick. Bad guys closing in almost immediately into that midpoint scene. The Christmas party doesn't end well. Mary has had too much to drink and has a meltdown in the kitchen over her son. Meanwhile, possible love interest Lydia kisses somebody else at the door romantically, and Paul, who sees this, just gives his disappointed sigh.
Yep.
Of course, with all these elements, they feel like they have to leave the party, which ruins Tully's chances with the girl.
Right.
So all three had this great start to the new year, and then shit. Not the new year. A good start to Christmas Eve. Christmas dinner, Paul gives a compliment to Mary, and she actually calls him on it, saying, I don't have the quote, but she says, "Look at you, you complimented somebody." So again with that, that theme of, can I be laid back and be a normal person, or am I still just going to be a mean, grumpy asshole?
Right.
Tully tries to capitalize on this and asks him for a trip to Boston. Mary probably could have helped him squash that if she herself didn't need a ride to Roxbury. So she, of course, encourages it. And what do? They all go on a road trip. So they drop Mary off at Roxbury so she can see her sister, and then they're off to Boston. This is why I think Mary's not the B story, because at this pivotal point, she disappears.
Yeah.
There's mixed scenes of Paul trying to be friendly, and in other parts, he's stern. It's his emotional back and forth. The bond with Tully culminates in the ice skating scene where they bump into Hugh Kavanaugh, a nemesis from Paul's past, and Tully lies to help him look better, right? Of course, then he's getting grumpy again because he doesn't want to have to talk about his past. And the next scene, Tully gets him to tell him why he left Harvard in a very unceremonious way. Next, in the candlepin bowling scene, Paul reverts back to his know-it-all self. He stops being the friendly, kind of laid-back guy, and he actually tells a guy that's dressed up as Santa how his outfit is historically inaccurate.
Right.
Tully gets up enough nerve to ask him which eye does he look at, because it's distracting whenever he's talking to Paul. Because Paul has a lazy eye, and he never gives him an answer at that point. All is lost. 1 hour, 43-minute mark. Tully, who has convinced Paul to accompany him to see his dad, comes face to face with his father in a mental institution. This scene is particularly heartbreaking as Tully talks to him as a true son, longing to be with his dad. The most honest Tully will be in this entire film, and all he's met with from his father is an uttering that he thinks the staff is trying to poison his food.
Right.
Dark Night of the Soul. Paul helps Tully understand that he is not his father, and he will never be his father, and not to worry about that. Mary joins them for dinner. There's the Cherries Jubilee scene where the waitress won't serve the Cherries Jubilee to Tully because he's underage and there's alcohol in it. They then order all the ingredients, take it outside, pour their own booze in it, and light it on fire. It's sort of like a coming together for the three, which leads to our break into 3 where they celebrate New Year's Eve together with Danny, who's like the janitor guy. And Paul's still working. What?
I was going to ask, are we going to spoil at the end?
Yes.
I guess you're going to have to if you're doing all the beats, huh?
Spoiler alert. It's coming. Anyway, he gets another chance to prove that he's a human, that he's being laid back, when Tully asks to light off a firecracker. Of course, his first stern reaction is no way, right? Because that's what he does. No. But then they're like, come on. And he's like, all right, fine, we'll do it in the kitchen. This is Paul with his emotional tug of war, right?
Yeah.
Trying to be more human versus being a stern asshole. Okay, that brings us into Act 3 now, because now we are shifted out of Act 2 to where the break is over and all the kids are back, right? 5-point finale. Here we go. Real quick. Gathering the team. The break is over and school is back in session. Smith has cut his hair. Kuntz got severely sunburned, and Paul is working on being more laid back, more human. Execution of the plan. A wiser Paul seems to have learned his lessons on the journey and will face the second half of the school year perhaps less cranky and maybe a little less hard-assed. As the first class he comes back, he's actually smiling in class as he's talking to the students. Hightower surprise. Tully's parents have arrived, and they are pissed about the Boston trip. Tully was not permitted to see his father, and it caused a family stir. Dig down deep. Paul has a chance to blame it all on Tully to get out of this. In fact, the parents give him that out. They even say, we know he forced you to do this. We know it's all on him, blah, 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 blah. Execution of the new plan. Nope. Paul even says, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yep.
He falls on the metaphorical sword, and he takes the blame in order to save Tully from expulsion and eventually having to go to a military school, military academy. He tells the parents it was his idea.
And we should add, this is taking place in the 70s, right?
Yep.
So military academy would imply he's going to Vietnam.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And you know what? I actually saw that. Somebody online said that. I think it was on Reddit. They're like, people don't realize the impact of that moment.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Because we talk about, oh, man, I have to go to military school and Bill and Ted and Dead Poet Society and all these other movies where it's a threat. In this time, that really was a threat because you're going to Vietnam.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. So he falls on the sword for Tully. He gets fired for it. This, after all, was the most human thing he could have done.
Yep.
Before he leaves, he lets Tully know. This is one of my favorite moments when he comes out of the office and Tully's got tears in his eyes and is staring at him, and he's kind of got tears in his eyes, and they look at each other, and Mary is sitting there, and they're all waiting for him to say something. I'm sorry, or I did it for you, or I got fired, or whatever. There's nothing explained. He simply looks at Tully and says one thing. This one, as he points to his eye.
Yeah.
This is the one you look at. And then he leaves.
Yep.
Like, oh, God, what a heartbreaking way to end it. Climax, Tully has led Paul right to his spiritual goal. It was Tully, after all, that led him to his spiritual goal without either of them even knowing it. Being a Barton School hermit for most of his life, his termination will force Paul to go out into the world and start living his life again.
Yep.
Right?
I love the final scene. I know you're getting to it right now.
Yeah. That was the spiritual goal the whole time, and perhaps the real meaning behind the stated theme, which was try to act more like a human being. That meant get the hell out of that school, man. Go live your life.
Yeah,
almost
write
like
your
how
book.
almost like at the end of Dead Poet Society, how John Keating has to go off now into the world, right? Resolution. Just as the intros to Paul, Mary, and Tully all happened in order, so do their goodbyes. First, Mary gives him his journal to write in on his journey. Then the next scene, Tully thanks him outside and gives him a goodbye handshake in their final moment. And then lastly, Paul says himself has to say goodbye to the school. He does this before he drives off, he stops, he takes out the Remy Martin Louis Tray, which is a very expensive bottle of brandy that he stole from Woodrow's office, takes a big swig of it and spits it out at the school before he leaves. By the way, a little trivia, that specific bottle, because there's a lot of versions of the Louis Tray. It's mentioned in Cocktail with Tom Cruise. It's mentioned in a lot of different movies. That specific bottle from that movie, with the box that it came in, would be worth $10,000 today. Okay, and then the closing image. Paul drives away, a teacher no longer instructing students.
Yeah.
Character arc, as we talked about real quick. Paul's tangible and spiritual goals both relate to the theme about being more human-like, but his spiritual goal leaving the school is not one that he didn't know he needed.
Yeah.
Again, if you had told him that at the beginning, he would have said no fucking way, right? The school is the only place he feels comfortable. So if you'd have told him by the time this journey's over, you're going to leave the school, he would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Aside from Dead Poets Society, it's also very, very, it's actually more similar. I was thinking Robin Williams, so I thought Dead Poets. It's actually more similar to Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams' character is kind of stuck as being this psychiatrist since his wife died.
Yeah.
And he's kind of stuck in a rut. And then, Will Hunting gets him out of his shell, and he leaves at the end to go off and enjoy the world.
Right. Yep.
So it's kind of more like that. Did you have something to say before we end?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I know we got to wrap this up, but part of me was like, I wish it could have ended in a way where, because he finally made this connection with the kid who obviously doesn't have a father figure or a healthy father figure. And I was like, man, I wish they could have continued some kind of relationship. But it just, I think the ending was perfect because it's a professional relationship. You just can't, right? And then when it ends, it would be weird if he stayed in touch with the kid, right? It would just be strange.
Exactly.
So it ended perfectly. And he was able to do something his father never could have done. Stand up for him and defend him and go to bat for him and all that stuff.
Or his mom and stepdad.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody stands up for this kid.
Yeah.
Nobody.
So I loved it. I love the way it ended. Yeah, so really quick, 6 degrees.
Wait. Before we get to that, real quick. Nominated for 5 Academy Awards, it won 1 Best Supporting Actress for Divine Joy Randolph, who played Mary. One interesting fact about her performance, she's a non-smoker in real life. So they gave her fake cigarettes for the shoot, but she didn't think it looked realistic. So she wanted to use real cigarettes. But so that she wouldn't get addicted, she found one that was the worst tasting. Turns out to be American Spirits. She smoked those in the movie so that when the movie shooting was done, she could easily quit and not be addicted.
Yeah.
After it was made, it didn't have a distributor. Alexander Payne, we've talked about this in our previous podcast. He took it to the Toronto International Film Festival, and Focus Features bought it for $30 million.
Wow.
It's the 5th Alexander Payne movie to feature some sort of a road trip following About Schmidt 2002, Sideways 2004, The Descendants 2011, and Nebraska 2013. I already talked about that bottle of Remy Martin Louis Trey was $10,000. Also because that bottle that it comes in is real crystal.
Well, it's a good thing I didn't drink today because it would have been really expensive to copy
really
that.
Pull that. If we pull that off, that would have been the podcast of all podcasts. Before we get to 6 Degrees, one more quick thing. One of the funniest parts of the movie, it's loaded with funny parts, but one of the best exchanges he has with Kuntz in the beginning of the film when he gives them all their papers and most of them failed.
Yeah.
The kid goes, I don't understand. And Paul goes, that's obvious. And he's like,
well, then the other kid says, I can't fail.
Yeah, he goes, no. What I mean is, I can't fail this class. And he goes, I think you're selling yourself short, Mr. Kuntz. I'd certainly believe that you can.
Yeah, that was great.
So he had lines like that throughout the whole film. That and telling the guy dressed up as Santa, the drunk in the bar that's dressed up as Santa, how his outfit is historically inaccurate was another great scene for me. I was laughing my ass off.
Yeah.
All right, 6 Degrees. Who did you pick?
6 Degrees. I actually was going through the list, and I forgot Jack White was in Flower Moon until I went into the credits. I'm like, Jack White? Oh, my God, I forgot. So I picked Jack White and Dominic Sessa.
Yes, Dominic Sessa. All right, Jack White, who plays radio show announcer in Killer of the Flower Moon, and Dominic Sessa, who plays Angus Tully in The Holdovers. So Jack White, you would think, would be a tough one because aside from all the million videos he's done, he's also appeared on a lot of TV. Not that many movie appearances.
Right.
One of them, however, was Cold Mountain in 2003, which was loaded with people, including Renee Zellweger, who was in Cinderella Man 2005, the boxing movie with Russell Crowe. Also had Paul Giamatti, who is in The Holdovers with Dominic Sessa. So we normally don't use the movies that we're talking about, but I had no choice with Dominic Sessa because this was his only movie. So 3, Cold Mountain, Cinderella Man, and The Holdovers will connect Dominic Sessa to Jack White.
Well, as always, this is fun. This coming week, we're going to be doing some in-person recording, hopefully. So stay tuned for that. You might actually get to see some of that on socials before this even airs, so we'll find out. But because Jerome is bringing the fam back to Michigan.
Yes, me, the wife, the kids, we're all heading to Detroit. I'm wearing my Lions jersey, my Kelvin Johnson Black Lions jersey as commemorative. Yes, we get on a plane tomorrow, and we will be headed to Detroit.
Can't wait. And we're going to see a Red Wings game Thursday, right?
Thursday night, we're going to see Red Wings and the Islanders at the Little Caesars Arena. I haven't been there yet since they've built the new one. I like to call it, my little nickname for it is The Oven. So we're going to go see the Wings at the Oven.
Been there a few times. Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right. Well, go support your local cinemas.
Yes, sir. Keep drinking and keep watching.